Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, thanks everybody for joining, and thanks for Craig for actually setting this up. So it's something, this kind of get together, I'd probably call it. It's going to be quite informal, but it's something that's been on my mind for quite a while. There's with the Manchester Java community, there's myself, um, Debbie Roycroft, Andy Dunmore, and there's another lady called Alison McGreed. But over the past kind of, like, we all have organised it historically, but over the past, I suppose, few years, we've just found that people's time has become, obviously less and less available for the community, which is fine. Everybody kind of priorities change. Um, but the worst thing that could happen would be that I feel is that I'd become a bottleneck for the community, being like the only one who can organise events, the only one who's kind of trying to get speakers, or just kind of there's various kind of admin tasks that go in the background. And I've just become aware that, like, I don't want things to stop because maybe I can't do them, which could happen at some point. I just don't know. And I really feel that the community should be run by the community, not just like one person, or even just a small kind of exclusive group of people. Anybody who wants to get involved should be able to. We should be working out how we can make that happen, and what we need to do to make it more accessible and those kind of things. So that's kind of, I suppose, some of where this originally came from. And then Craig's more recently been kind of getting involved with the community, which has been great, and giving us a bit of a kick up the bum to get this in place and make it happen. So there's no real, here's Andy actually. So Andy does help organise the events as well, so he's just joining in. So yeah, there's no real agenda, I would say, as such for this. I know Craig's got a few ideas of things that we could talk around. I suppose maybe, I don't really, this isn't a forced thing, so I know that introductions can be awkward and people wouldn't necessarily want to do them, but it might be interesting just to kind of see, from everyone's perspective who's kind of joining, what is it, you're looking for out of this session today, I suppose, and understand a bit more about people, how much you want to get involved with the community or not, or if it's, those kind of things. So I suppose if everyone, feel free to say no if you don't want to do this, but I'll probably just kind of go around the virtual room a little bit and start with Craig, if that's all
right. Yeah, I don't work as a developer at the moment, but I'm looking to transition. I'd like to help as much as I can during the community, whether that's arranging speakers, doing technical things like building a website, stuff like that. I'm happy to help with everything and anything, really.
Cool. Helen?
Yeah, I've probably been more heavily involved with the London Java community, despite the fact I'm geographically closer to Manchester. I've pretty much started my speaking journey with the LJC, so I feel like I'm arguably very loyal to the Manchester Java community as a result of being close to you, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. I'm obviously particularly passionate in getting newer faces into the conference speaking circuit, especially faces from underrepresented groups. So that's kind of, again, that dog is just too cute. I'm willing and able to offer help and support and encouragement. Is probably my strongest suits.
Sorry, I'm just wrestling. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I suppose I saw the title of this and I jumped on because helping out at the Manchester, even though I'm not in Manchester, is the closest one to me in North Wales. And it's something I've been mulling over in my head, whether to take that step and I suppose offer to help out. It's something I've been mulling up for a while. So I'm very eager to get more involved and try and do more for the community, because it is, I'm not in Manchester, but it is the closest one to me. So I have got a vested interest in, it having events that I'm personally interested in going to.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Magda?
I'll move to Manchester soon, and I'm interested. I'm a backend developer, Java, and I don't like do public speaking, or I don't have anything prepared just to, but I can offer to mentor if it's anybody have a question about Java and more about backend. I don't do front end HTML and stuff like that. And I'm interested to meet more Java developer. And also I want to know more, like last session I've been to Quarkus was quite interesting. So it's something new, I didn't know about it. And I'm willing to give it a try if I've got time. So it was a difference from being booked. And that's it. I just like this session to continue. And because I'm in Manchester, do you meet? They've got a meeting place where we like meet real life as well. Before you had one, or
Yeah, we did. So we, before obviously the whole lockdown situation, we hosted all our events at Auto Trader offices.
I know Auto Trader. Okay, so
Yeah.
well, it's quite. So that's the point for me, just for me to meet other people in Java community and find out news about Java. I'm working with Java 11 now, so I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe people move to other.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a kind of like getting back to those in-person meetups. Obviously, we're just kind of tied by obviously government restrictions and timescales and things like that. But it's, you know, we will be looking to do that at some point, because yeah, I agree, they are great, you know, for that networking and that kind of connections within the community. It makes a big difference.
It's interesting, that point, actually. I'll come back to it when you finish the introductions, but I want to come back to the in-person meetups and what COVID has and hasn't brought us.
Yeah. Andy.
Hey, I've been involved with the Manchester Java community for feels like a few years now. A bit less so since my baby was born, but yeah, I'm interested in a lot of getting up to date on quite a lot of the new stuff. So things like Quarkus, when I first heard of that, I was like, wow, that's really cool. And like the Graal VM stuff as well that we've had, I think, a talk on before. So yeah, I'm helping out, but hopefully at some point more again soon, because right now it feels like Nick's having to do the brunt of the work.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if you were on when I mentioned it, but yeah, that's kind of part of the motivation for this meeting, is around trying to remove myself as a bottleneck. Obviously, I was still passionate about the community, you know, doing well and succeeding and stuff, but not being that kind of potentially one person who, if things, you know, things only happen if I'm available kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so interesting. Maybe we go back to that point, Helen, then, that you were just starting to talk about. It feels like it might be an interesting kind of discussion point in general, because there's no real agenda to this.
Okay. Just my observations. I mean, obviously COVID has changed the world, and we're not going back to what it was anytime soon. We may never go back to what it was, because, you know, it's here to stay and all the rest of it. But one thing, well, I guess on the positive side, is the lack of physical meetups, if you like, does mean that you can be the Manchester Java community and more. You've got 2 people on the call that don't live in Manchester, at least. You know, I only moved out of Stockport about 2 months ago now, and I'm only about an hour's drive, and you've got somebody in North Wales. So arguably it lowers that geographical barrier, because you're not just the Manchester Java community, you're kind of the whole. You can be the Northern Java community if you want to, you can be the everyone but London Java community if you want to. But I guess on the flip side of that is everybody has Zoom fatigue right now. I certainly have Zoom fatigue. It takes, you know, you're just talking to that and you're talking into the void, and especially when you're giving a talk, like this is something I've spoken to Trisha about. You give a talk and I walk away absolutely wiped out, and I'm like, I don't even get to go to the pub, I don't get to see anyone, I don't get to do anything, I just have to talk at the camera for half an hour, and you give the talk without any of the perks sometimes. So I think it's really important that whatever we do, we find a way to kind of at least acknowledge that. I don't know if you can compensate for it, but at least acknowledge it, because I think people are kind of starting to really mourn for the lives that we used to have, and we don't know if we're going to get back. And even if we do get back, they'll probably be substantially changed. So I think there's opportunities there, but they are mixed with some realities of, I don't like the word normal, but new normal, kind of what was normal and now is normal type thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've thought about a bit about this as well, and the reach of the community is just completely different to what it was 2 years ago.
It
And
is.
maybe there's a hybrid kind of model where I remember, I think probably about 3 or 4 years ago we did a remote meetup with Andres Almarai. He was speaking. He was in Switzerland, but we were in person on a remote kind of. It was like
Right. Yeah.
a YouTube kind of stream, and it kind of worked well. But I suppose that potentially is like we always used to have in our mindset. We need a speaker in person, and that was kind of the model. You get somebody in, they do a talk for you, and people turn up and they get pizza and those kind of things. But actually, having that, but also kind of whether it's an in-person or a remote speaker, extending it to an online kind of presence as well feels like it would be a nice place to end up.
I think a hybrid model would be a really nice spot to aim for, because that also helps with people's psychologies, because there are some people who are happy and fine and want to meet up, say towards the end of this year, early next, and there are other people who don't. And there's no point going into the reasons. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's just that some people are more comfortable staying remotely for now, and some people are comfortable going ahead and meeting in person. And obviously, providing that's within the government guidelines. I'm not saying throw them out the window, but although some days. A hybrid model might be a really nice sweet spot and could help, because whether you get a speaker in person or whether you have people in person or some variation of that, you're going to need different organization off the back of that, because sometimes it's harder to organize something that's completely remote. Certainly from the ones I've been involved in, there's an awful lot that goes into remote organization that is just completely invisible.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that we've always had with the Java community has been very relaxed in terms of like we're not going for kind of high production values and bells and whistles kind of stuff. So I don't think we have to go too far. But at the same time, if we are going to have an in-person speaker and share that online, you need a certain level of quality then in terms of sound and
you do
visuals and things like that. So there's technical things that we've not ever had to think about before there.
Tech checks.
Yeah.
I live for tech checks.
Yeah. Has anybody else got any kind of thoughts, opinions on that?
I think the hybrid is the only way to go, because doing online means you can reach speakers that would never normally come in person. So you can get people from the US, from Europe, places that they wouldn't normally travel from. But then as well, you still want to meet people in person and speak to them and see what they're doing. So I don't know if we have like a split model where we just get together once every other month in person for like some sort of social, and we stick with doing more technical stuff as like online Zoom, so we can record it easily and stick it on the channel.
Yeah, I suppose.
But then the other issue is then you've got an overlap with LJC and some of the other meetups.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've kind of observed as well. It's like your kind of events become less, I suppose, unique in a sense, because the same speakers, might be doing London the week before or something. And
I think I've seen Helen speak about 3 or 4 times now.
So I think it's probably one of those. We're going to learn as we go and evolve with the times and the new normal, as you say, and see what that takes us. That's
all the more reason to get new speakers onto the conference circuit, though, isn't it? Because you see the same speakers go around, go around the circuit, but that's just between Manchester and London or further abroad. You will see the same speakers. So
I'd like to try and get people that aren't speakers, like a casual conversation for like 40 minutes and like, a couple of questions. People that aren't really on the speaker circuit, but are pretty interesting, try and tempt them on and like say, look, it's really informal. We'd like you to speak about, I don't know, Project Valhalla or Loom or, something like that, some internals of how Spring works, and say, look, it's super informal. You don't have to bring like a pre-prepared 40-minute talk. We'll just ask you a ton of questions and like a bit of coding or stuff like that. That's the sort of stuff that I'd really like to see. I know you're on the speaker circuit, but it's a lot of the times it feels a bit forced. It's like it's part of a sales pitch, and it's good in sometimes, and other times it's not so great. So it would be nice if we could have a mix of like getting people on that don't normally speak but would be interesting to talk to. if that makes sense.
I think that's what I liked about the unconference format, because you do get some people talking who you probably wouldn't have heard them talking because they're not confident to go on that, to make that step, but they might have very, very valuable contributions to a topic that it just seems to promote that ability to, it's off the cuff. I'll just put that sticker on the board and say, I'll talk about that for 10 minutes in an unconference.
By the way, did you see this? Do you know about that? Let's have a look at this for 5 minutes. That the LJC unconference was really good in December. I really enjoyed that. I think it's quite a nice format.
Yeah, I think for me, the conversational side of events is, as with this group we've got now, we're able to have a conversation. There's only 6 of us. As soon as you kind of get past maybe 10 or up towards 20, that becomes much more difficult. And that's everyone's got different kind of things they're looking for from a meetup. For me, that is one of the biggest kind of reasons why I'm involved in them, is that kind of conversation, as opposed to the talks are interesting, but if I can be there and have conversation with people alongside it, that's even better.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind code jams and things like that, where we get together and we all work on a project or work on a problem or something like that.
Yeah, we've run those in the past in person. We've had
that would be really nice to do in person. Sort of get together, people that are interested in a particular open source project. We can get together and hack on a bunch of stuff or some problems. Or
I tried to set one up, actually, a remote one.
OpenJDK.
2 other people came, and it was good because the people who were there were really wanted to be there, and we were all kind of interested, and we had some good chats. However, it didn't really it might have been timing. I don't know. I did it on a Saturday morning because obviously people work and stuff, but it didn't really kind of hit home. And I wonder if that is partly the remote nature as opposed to...
That's the sort of thing that I'd really be interested in, is code meetups, code jams, that sort of thing. I know you're involved in, what's it called now? Adoptium.
Adoptium, Adoptium.
Yeah, Adoptium after the rebrand.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we put that all on the website, hey, here's Nick, he's really well known within Adopt OpenJDK. It's just a jump off point for people like me who are new to the meetup to go, hey, here's a really interesting member of the MJC. This is what they work on. Maybe I'll drop them an email to say, hey, can I help? Can I get involved? That sort of thing. I don't think we really advertise that.
Very good kind of little connection we can make here, actually. So Craig's been thinking about trying to create a website for the MJC, which gives us that more of a presence. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but it just occurred to me again anyway. Jonathan Bullock, who's on the call, created JBake, static site kind of generator. So that feels like something that might be a sensible conversation to have maybe out of this kind of meeting, to explore that a bit further as to, should we, make use of JBake or some equivalent. It doesn't have to be, but, it might make sense too. And try and start to get that off the ground, give ourselves a presence, start to kind of, I suppose it gives it a bit more of a professional feel than just something Nick around, shackled together sometime.
I'd be happy to help on that.
Yeah.
Do you have it on GitHub, all this website development or?
Yes, that's a good point. So I truly believe we should do it open source, make it public. I don't think there's going to be anything sensitive that we'll be doing. So there's no real need for anything to be private. And it makes it transparent, doesn't it? Even the idea of open sourcing the whole community is something that me and kind of Craig talked a bit about. And by that, I mean, maybe using GitHub as somewhere where we can have discussions, whether that's, I think they have groups and stuff on GitHub, but they also have issues. So, if someone's interested in a speaker, you can put a speaker request in, and we can start to have, discussions about how we might get in touch with them, even try and bring them into the conversations if they're on GitHub themselves. So those are some kind of little things that have been bubbling around, but putting it into practice is always kind of different to actually just talking about it.
I think that's a good idea, because that's something that's got me involved in my local, it's not a user group, but it's like a tech group in North Wales, is they try to, it's kind of, they're trying to relaunch it or trying to reinvigorate using GitHub for management, the issues or talk ideas or actions that you need to perform in admin for, I don't know, they did Docker birthday one year, and it was trying to arrange a site or a venue that had good internet somewhere with enough people that could go and use the internet there. So that's something that would be a good idea. I think that would be a good way to go.
And I suppose like with the kind of the website idea, it's an opportunity for people who do want to just understand or just get a bit more involved in open source to do that with low pressure, low kind of expectation that it's not like a library, like you're not contributing to Spring, you're contributing to a community project, which you can add value to with fairly low barrier to entry, which might be quite nice for people.
Yeah, it looks a bit more professional as well, having a proper domain rather than just pointing to Meetup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know LJC have got quite a nice website.
Yeah, I don't think they update it as much as I'd like. I've gone there a few times and I think it's been a bit outdated. So maybe Helen can feed that back to them.
And I suppose something to kind of mention as well, like we as a group, we're not funded by anything. We don't have any way of making money. We don't have a legal entity where we. So everything we kind of do is pretty much volunteer based. In case you didn't know, I know that the LJC have ways of kind of financing things because of their relationship with Works, gives them a bit more, I suppose, capacity to do some bigger things than we might be able to do based on volunteer effort. But it's not to say we can't create something that's good, nice kind of face to the community. How kind of, I suppose, professional or whatever that needs to be. I don't think it needs to be that much, but we might get limited at some point around what we can do just due to finances and things like that.
Can I just pick up a point that Craig mentioned? If I understood your point correctly, Craig, you're talking about informal panels, I think would be my interpretation of them. So in terms of encouraging speakers who aren't on the conference circuit already to come to some kind of meetup and speak. So I think it's a really good idea. There's a couple of points I just wanted to mention around it. The first point is kind of on the, not scary spectrum, but the spectrum that I know from my own very recent experience that saying to someone, you can just come and do an informal talk or informal chat for 40 minutes can be just as scary as giving a 40-minute talk. However, that said, I don't think it's a big hurdle because what immediately came to mind is something I've not seen this format done anywhere else, and I'd love to see it and I'd love to participate in it. It's kind of mini panels. So you have, say, 10-minute slots, call it 15 for, cutoff time, but you have 10-minute slots, you have max 3 people and a moderator. You do put some effort into pre-prepping the questions.
Yeah,
and you get people much more used to just talking, and that's half the battle.
That's what I was going to say. We'd have to do some legwork in terms of giving them a pre-prepared list of questions, saying, "Look, this is what we're going to ask you. We think we'd stretch this out over to 45 minutes. So you're not coming in blind thinking, oh God, what am I going to talk about? It's like, right, this is what we're going to ask you. We'll try and stretch it to like 45 minutes, and then like 10 minutes worth of questions."
I wouldn't even worry about stretching it to 45 minutes. I potentially do like 20-minute panel, 10 minutes for questions, especially if you've got people who have never spoken before. It's actually really nerve-wracking to give your opinions. You see the record button and you get scared, and I don't know, that's just my personal thoughts. I'd start small and build it, but
I think my personal opinion is I think a lot of people would want to do it, and given enough of an informal environment. I mean, I find that most people would like to talk. They like to talk. They're excited about what they work in. They want to tell other people. So if you give them that opportunity and say, right, it's really informal. Here's a list of questions. Don't feel stressed out. If it all goes Pete Tong, don't worry. We won't put it on the channel. That's it. So and then try and get people in like that, because I've got a massive list of people that I'd love to speak to. So facilitating that via the MJC feels like a really good thing to do for the rest of the community as well, because I'm sure other people would be interested in the same sorts of things that I'm in.
Yeah, and it doesn't all need to be hardcore technical as well. It can...
that's what I'm only interested in.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. Like the topics should be quite open, and sometimes the softer skills, as some people sometimes call them, or maybe more kind of ethical kind of topics and things like that can be really interesting and useful. And like while we have a JVM, a JVM based community, we're not bound to that as content. by any means.
Should it be like 40 minutes? Because I think for someone to just to which is beginner in speaking, could it be like a short session? I mean, to be four speaker is 10 minutes each, or to talk about quick about the subject.
Like lightning talk, kind of.
Yeah, LJC do the Lightning Friday talks. That would be a good idea.
Yeah,
But then again, you've got the overlap between two communities. So would someone rather speak for MJC Lightning talks, or would they rather speak for LJC?
Something that's just actually come into my mind on that kind of situation is that maybe like we are a smaller community. Maybe we should try and kind of pitch ourselves as a bit like a feeder kind of, ground where people can try out their talks with a bit of a smaller community if they feel a bit, I don't know if it makes much difference, but maybe there's less pressure at the MJC than there is at the LJC to kind of give your first talk. I don't know.
I felt that. I kind of used the MJC to give my first kind of JVM talk. I felt like, I think I even spoke to you, Nick. It was like I saw it as a stepping stone before talking at the LJC. I felt like I needed to talk somewhere else before going to the LJC, because I kind of put the LJC up there on a pedestal, kind of like, that's global tier kind of thing, because I had that, well known. So I kind of, whether I consciously did it, but that felt natural to me to talk at the MJC before even attempting to even put my name down.
Is that still a factor since we've been more remote or not? Because I know it definitely probably was previously.
I don't think you necessarily need to compete. I'm going to use a word that I absolutely hate. I think you can synergize. Forget, I hate that this is even been recorded and I said that, but it's not about doing for me anyway, it's not about doing a lightning talk at the MJC or doing a lightning talk at the LJC. Lightning talks for me, because I've done them, have become synonymous with the LJC, but I've seen lots of other formats, like the type of format that both Craig and Magda have spoken about, that is more of the informal. Another format that I've not seen anywhere that I know I would suck at, hence I should probably do it, is here's a topic, talk about it for 5 minutes. So, or 10 minutes, and it can be any topic in the JavaSphere or not in the JavaSphere, whatever. And so many people find that really difficult, but for encouraging new speakers and for building confidence, that's another type of content that I've not seen created anywhere else. It's a completely different value, and it's much more down the new speakers route than what we've spoken about here. So if you wanted to position yourself, in part towards new speakers, that would be something to consider. If you want to position yourself more as getting speakers who aren't necessarily on the conference circuit and maybe don't want to be on the conference circuit, that's completely fine. Then the ideas, like the mini panels like Craig was suggesting, I think would be really good. And I've not seen that format in other meetups.
Yeah, I think so. I suppose the question I would kind of ask is like, what would we need to do to kind of make that happen? What is it? Is it the typical email members and get a bit of a kind of pitch of what the idea is together, share that with our membership and see what kind of hit rate we get, or is it more targeted? We can kind of, we maybe already know some people who might be good candidates for that. I don't know.
My gut says the latter. My gut says fake it till you make it.
Right.
If Craig's already got a bunch of people, then maybe you
whether they get back to me.
Well, yeah, but
thanks, Ron.
But if you can kind of plan the first, 3, and then see if you can get some momentum. I don't know. That would be my gut.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Get a few under our belts, and then we can show people, this is the sort of format we've got. Here's a link to the videos on YouTube. This is what it will feel like.
Yeah.
So don't feel pressurized to, producing the perfect talk.
And we have got connections within this small group here. I've got good connections with various people. Jonathan no doubt has through his kind of JBait work. Helen, you obviously have as well. I don't know about anybody else, but you may have as well. And so I think we've got networks which allow us to maybe kind of reach out to some people that we might think would be interested in being involved in. And maybe that should be some of us as well. Putting ourselves onto this kind of panel to start with, just to at least give a face in there. So yeah, I mean that sounds kind of good. I suppose it'd be good to kind of maybe get something in terms of a little kind of email kind of pitch thing that we would be able to use which has a consistent kind of description of what we're trying to do, and share that out with people we think might be interested. Would anybody be able to come up with that? Just kind of define the idea a bit more in a friendly way that we can kind of reach out to people with.
I'm just going to throw Craig under the bus, but say I'm happy to work with you on it.
If only there was a professional writer on this panel.
Only. I'm happy to work with you on it. But
yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Like if Craig can maybe kind of try and pull something together and get a review.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we're all here to kind of review that as well, and kind of, I'm not, doesn't have to be anything fancy, does it? Ultimately, it's just kind of, I'm not. I think if I was to write, I'm not fully kind of. I think you both have a better idea of what it is this looks like, so that would probably make sense to kind of try and define that, which would be good. Yeah, I mean that sounds positive. I think having something unique about our community that makes it different and gives it that. Yeah, I've got sales terms coming out like you, Helen. Unique selling point, the USP we're looking for.
Value add.
Yeah, value add. But yeah, I think that'll be really good. That'll really be good. Cool. So I think we've kind of covered off a couple of things. There's obviously the website conversation, so I think that'll be good. There's this idea for a format which gives us something a bit different and hopefully gives opportunity to aspiring speakers and stuff, which should be great. Are there any other things?
Yeah, we need to pick a domain name.
Pick a domain name, right? That's naming is hard.
So I think most people see us as Java, Manchester Java community.
Yeah.
But a lot of the user groups have user group or jug in the name.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to keep consistent with LJC because we sort of feed into that.
So
they're the London Java community, we're the Manchester Java community.
Something that's been on my mind, to be honest, this, and like I'm not sure where to go because the Manchester Java community, for those who don't know, has its origins. I can't remember how many years we've been running now. It's probably over 5, maybe kind of nearer to 10. But Alison McGreevy founded the community, and that came out of, she was, I think she might have been at DevOps, and I think she was even maybe talking to Trisha G. And Trisha gave her the push to set up the MJC, but Trisha was involved with the LJC. So that's where the kind of similarities in naming originally came from. And I think that's, I suppose, that's good and it's great. But I have wondered around the branding. Does it matter? Should we be Manchester Jug like other ones, or is Manchester Java community fine? And I don't know. I'd say I'm probably kind of on the fence. I think there's benefits either way. Like the LJC is really a brand, and that's kind of quite known globally. I don't know whether the MJC has that same kind of feel.
So they have londonjavacommunity.co.uk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, tell them to update it, Helen.
Okay.
Keep it updated. Yeah, I'm happy to buy the domain name, but we just need to pick something.
Yeah.
So it is quite a long domain to write out. Manchester Java community. So I was looking at a .org because that made more sense for us than a .com or a .co.
The shortest you could go is like manjug, I suppose, if it was to kind of.
Yeah, I suppose that's got different connotations.
Oh,
so
it's not very inclusive, is it? So.
Yeah, I think we should
probably think about that before I said it, to be honest. So I apologize for that.
Just skip that one. Let's move on.
Yeah. I think we can't use the term jug. That's going to be problematic, as they say, long term. So I still quite like Manchester Java community.
Yeah.
So and it does look like we feed into.
And obviously MJC, that's probably taken, but that would be our abbreviation. Yeah. So
it does seem positive to kind of piggyback on the London Java community's brand a bit there. Kind of. I don't know whether there's any formal. It just seems that there's a lot of synergies, I guess is the word that popped. It just seems that it seems silly not to try and take advantage of connections that we've got there, to benefit. It's one big Java community. We're not competing. It's, it just seems silly not to take advantage of any, I kind of think of, when I suppose I'm thinking in the future, if somebody, a big global speakers willing to come to LJC. You know, it's like, can you piggyback and do you want to pop up north to Manchester at the same time since you're flying into the UK? That kind of thing, you know, we're not competing, but we can take advantage of any, you know, working with, I suppose.
Yeah. And so before kind of lockdown, that was something we were definitely doing. We had we were kind of had this little group, and it's kind of obviously fallen by the wayside because travel isn't a thing anymore. But it was organising speakers on jug tours, and it was the like the British Isles kind of jug tour. We'd try and get people to Manchester, to Dublin, to Belfast. I think there's a one, and obviously London, and I think there's Birmingham, and so we that was it. There was kind of links into the LJC, but also the Dublin jug as well. So that'll hopefully we can kind of whatever connections we've got to make use of them, and kind of I think the LJC over the past year have helped us out a lot. They're sponsoring our meetup. Well, Rec works more specifically than the LJC, who are the people who kind of are behind the LJC as well. So definitely, I totally agree. We need to kind of keep building those connections. I have quite a lot of conversations with Dominique at the LJC and Barry, so we kind of try to work together. I help out quite a bit with the LJC in various things, and I'm sure where we can, where we have ideas which might kind of link up, I'm happy to explore those and have those conversations.
Do we want to put it to the votes and just send it out to members, or do we want to decide now and just pick something and say, right,
names?
Tough luck, you didn't attend the meetup, so this is what we chose.
Well, I mean, I think like Manchester Java community is what we've been called from the start, and that's our brand essentially. And I think, my thoughts were like with the jug, it kind of feels nice because jug is that that word which is global across Java communities. However,
it's not used as much as you think it is. I think it's like a 60-40 split. There's a website that lists all the user groups, and some people have gone with their own thing. So
so I suppose I probably mean like from the Oracle kind of setting, Java user group is the jug is the term. But I think Java community for us is what we've used, and I think it's fine. So I'm happy for us to just stay as we are with that, to be honest, and use that as our domain name if other people think that's cool as well. It sounds like generally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not because I know bugger all about SEO, but my understanding is that you can SEO your way around that. So if people type in Manchester Jug, you can still find the site and that. So hopefully we can address that.
Yeah, no, true.
Isn't there a Manchester in the US as well, though?
There is.
I found that.
I found that. Someone directed me to that when I asked years ago. I was like, wrong country.
Right.
Yeah, my son found a skate park in Manchester and he got really excited, and I had to tell him it was the US, not the UK.
Cool. Yeah, so I mean that let's go with that. So that would be what .co.uk or .org.
.org. I'd probably prefer to go with an org. That's what we are. But I mean, if you want to go with a .com or .co.uk.
Or whichever's cheapest.
I'm not bothered. I'm paying, so it's fine.
Appreciate that.
Org as well, for me.
Org, I think it's less. I suppose where we are in terms of meetups potentially being remote, more hybrid, globally reaching, org feels reasonable, I think, doesn't it, rather than being specific to like a UK domain.
Yeah.
So let's go with that. Cool. That sounds good. So I suppose like that ultimately becomes the front for whatever website we create. In terms of organising events, like people have different views on Meetup. My kind of thoughts on it are that while it costs us like it's about £70 every 6 months, it does offer a lot. So you get the functionality around kind of creating our meetups is there. We've got this, I think it's over 1,000 people mailing list, and it's not to say we couldn't get people over to something of our own at some point in the future, but as it stands, I think our website would be almost like a front, which would then link through to Meetup. What's it called again? Meetup.
Yeah, Meetup.
Yeah, but maybe like longer term, we do think about is there something that we can offer ourselves? I know LJC, they have an interesting setup where they branch off into Eventbrite, don't they? So they use Meetup and Eventbrite. I don't know the reasons behind that. I'd have to.
It's a bit annoying, that actually.
Yeah.
One forwards to the other one. I'm not sure which way around it is.
It's they advertise on Meetup, but then there's a link to Eventbrite to go and register.
Right.
And then
Oh, yeah.
Eventbrite never saves any of your details, so you have to fill it in 50 bloody times. It's really annoying.
You have to
I
register.
don't disagree.
But yeah, I mean, we don't want to or need to kind of introduce anything new. I suppose it's just more of like, I don't even know if there are any open source kind of offerings that would provide a similar kind of functionality as something like Meetup.
I
For longer term.
Yeah, I had a quick look, and there's nothing that I saw open source. There is another platform that does the similar sort of thing as Meetup, but I'm guessing it's going to be chargeable as well. I didn't see what the fees were, but the problem is everything's on Meetup. So
yeah, people go there, don't they? And they split meetups via Meetup.
You're not a Meetup, then they're like, oh, tough, like, that's it. But I don't know if it's worth speaking to somebody at some point to create like a lot of the other communities do this. The Go community does this. .NET does this. There's a single community on Meetup, and it just links to everything. Nice. So it's like one parent. I think that's all you pay. You pay for like this parent that covers all the other Meetup costs for everyone else.
You kind of almost like joining up with other groups to share.
Yeah, and then you can go back to there, and then you can see everything that's coming up within that particular Java community.
It's really interesting, actually, isn't it? Because like, if you're just interested in Java or JVM kind of content, that gives you a stream of events across all groups, which is actually quite powerful, really.
Yeah. And it's also good to go and find people to come and talk.
Like an aggregator, isn't it?
Come and speak for us.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, probably worth thinking about a bit more, that one. As if, does something already exist and we're just not aware of it, or is there scope for a space in the kind of, I suppose, market or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know who would ultimately be responsible for purchasing something like that, because I know Oracle's pretty defensive of the Java OpenJDK sort of naming.
So actually, there's an interesting thing here. So I was at the Jug Leaders Summit, which was organised just before DevNexus. I don't know if you were there, Helen. I think you might. Did you not? You miss out. So there is a GitHub project called Global Jugs, and it's that idea around trying to take it, I suppose, away from Oracle somewhat in terms of them holding the keys to all this information about the global jugs and actually open sourcing and driving it by the community. So that's kind of started. But this idea of centralizing all the events as well is probably an extension to that. It just hasn't got, I suppose, momentum at the moment. I've contributed a little bit, a couple of other people have, but I'm not sure where it's going to go, where it's going to end up. So I'll maybe try and share a bit more information about that after this with people, so you can have a little look and see what I'm talking about a bit more. But that's possibly, you need to get a core of some people, and the people who run Jugs. There's a vast mix, but you often find people who are working for organisations who are happy to sponsor and try and kind of help out. So it might be that to have a centralised kind of meetup page that aggregates Jug events essentially is something that a company would be happy to sponsor if we have the right connection.
Yeah,
I don't know. Probably one for a bit of a slow burner, that one, to kind of think about.
I don't think that Java user group thing's been updated in a while. I think you did some contributions and there was maybe one or two things afterwards, but they need a domain, they need a bit more thought around it, I think.
It does, yeah. I think that's it. It just needs a bit of, I think, really it's involvement, momentum, people being interested, and maybe, a bit more conversation. I think that's a bit like this, I suppose, this kind of what we're having now. If you want anything to happen, you need to try and pull people together and have the conversation, and then take away some kind of actions from that conversation. And I suppose this was kind of, I don't know, we've got about 10 minutes. One thing I was going to ask about this session was that my feeling is that this would be a useful thing that we did regularly, open to anybody essentially, but just kind of trying to put something in the calendar, whether it's once a month, maybe that's enough or too much, I don't know. So I'm up to kind of thoughts on that, whether you think it'd be a good idea, first and foremost. and how regular we should do this kind of thing.
I'm up for that. I think that would be a good thing. It gives you a bit of focuses you on any actions, having that constant, right, I'm going to have to turn up to that and show progress kind of thing. I think that's a good incentive for me personally anyway. But I'd like that, especially because these conversations, I do find value in them personally. I do like to, it is nice to be involved in the community. There are benefits.
What I will say is that, like, while I won't want anyone to feel pressured, like, I totally get that everyone has life, things that just go on, and it's not, you can't always make these meetups, you can't always kind of do what you wanted to do for these meetups. So there'd never be any expectation. We're all volunteers and we're just trying our best, essentially. So, but yeah, at the same time, the same as you, Jonathan, having a bit of a deadline makes me do stuff. A bit of pressure is
that's just me personally. It's the way I work, unfortunately. I wish I didn't, but that's just
it's probably a lot of people, to be honest, but it's just kind of the way it is. In terms of like timing of these kind of things, I tend to schedule things on once because it's convenient for me, and that's not the way it should be, but I've been selfish. But also I'd be interested, does this work for you? Do like the meetups we host generally kind of timings work? I know we've done a few in the evenings, I've ones at lunch, but that's just because if I'm running them, it works. It doesn't affect my kind of personal life after work, which is good, and I can slot it into my day. But if we have more people, then they can be run at any time, essentially. If someone's happy to run one, it can happen.
I'm more available at night after 6:30 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm available for this time, but I need like a bit more notice. I know this one was a bit late. That was my fault. But just to make sure scheduling at work doesn't get in the way of an afternoon meetup.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a week, 2 weeks is normally enough to say, right, I've got nothing on that afternoon.
I'm fairly flexible, although normally Tuesday at this time doesn't work, but I moved stuff around. So
yeah, I mean, historically we've done Thursdays, last Thursday when we were doing in-person meetups, but I kind of continued that a little bit just because it was like what we were used to. But it actually doesn't really matter. So timing, it's just, so we like routine, don't we? Sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes nice to think, if you are involved in the community and you're thinking, right, last Thursday of the month, it's always the Java event. Will we ever get, I don't know if we'd ever get to doing them more than once a month. Maybe that's something to aspire to as we
definitely
go a bit more active. But for now, once a month feels like a reasonable number.
Yeah, I'd be up for twice a month. Like, even if it's just a totally informal get together. I mean, that's another reason why I'm here, is for the speaking to other developers and like seeing what people are doing, like talking about stuff like, why did you use Postgres over MySQL, you muppet, or just stuff like that. Just like generally speaking to people, in person. Yeah, it's very different to speaking to people on Reddit, because I know a lot of people get like tech news and that, but for me that's I mean I'm on Reddit all the time, so you find stuff out like within like 10 seconds. So it's normally about a month or 2 months before some meetup picks up on something. So I think I'm here for speaking to other people and socializing and seeing what other people are doing and that sort of thing.
I think we talked about it last year. The idea of something what you said, Craig, reminded me of the Java Council podcast, that just discussing what's happening in the JVM industry, just kind of saying, there's a bit of a trend here, or have you seen this news come out? I like that. I like to listen to that kind of a podcast or watch it. If it was a YouTube channel, that kind of thing. I know it puts a lot of pressure and it's kind of a public forum, but just having that social community talk.
Has anyone been listening to the Inside Java? Sorry, on the Inside Java podcast? Oh, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, if we could have something similar like that on here, that would be brilliant.
And that could, I feel, I'm not volunteering for this. I feel like that could be a regular thing as well, especially if we could get speakers, every quarter, something like that, having a like you're saying, the informal panel, having a chat about the current state of everything JVM or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that could be really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it escapes from that almost rigid structure of a talk. A lot of the times, like I've seen more than a few talks by the same people, or like the Quarkus World Tour. So it ends up being almost exactly the same.
Mhm.
So it would be nice if it was a bit more informal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I quite like that format.
Did anyone come to any of those sessions where I think we had like Jim Goff on? We had like, it was more like a conversation between me and Jim, which I don't know what people thought of that, with that kind of format. Maybe that's still a bit too kind of non-conversational, a bit more, you know, it's a bit more specific to a person, I suppose, and their kind of experiences. I suppose we're talking more about topical kind of current trend type.
That's still really interesting, especially when it's, you know, somebody like Jim.
Yeah.
You know, somebody who's exceptionally well known.
I find it interesting. I find it fascinating hearing his, you know, finding out more about him, his backstory, where, you know, his career path. I find that personally interesting. I'd love to, you know, I'd love to hear more about that of various people we could get if we could get them to talk about their lives. But I'd love to hear more of that.
I mean, maybe we should get the creator of J-Bake on one.
Yeah, that would be
I
good.
think that's been done. I think that's been done.
Yeah, no, so that's another kind of I suppose, like with Jim, it was quite, I'd say it was quite easy to prepare because I know him. I already knew him. We had a connection. You see these people interviewing people, and like when you don't know them, trying to create that natural kind of conversation connection, I can imagine it's quite, you know, it's a skill in its own right. So I don't know whether I would be able to do that or not, but I'd be happy to kind of try again with somebody maybe a bit out of kind of my network. And if we, I suppose this is where maybe like the kind of starting to kind of generate ideas more as a community of like, who would we like to hear from, and use that as a kind of a kickoff and try and find some interesting people to get onto the JVM lunch, as we would call it, and have these conversations.
Definitely. And just going back to what you said before, I think maybe because of lockdown, but I think the lunchtime slot works for me. I found that works a lot. Again, echoing what Craig said, you know, with a bit of notice, you can reorganize your working week so it doesn't conflict with any other meetings you need to go to. But equally, evenings work as well. You know, if it's
So something that was just kind of coming to mind then was that maybe there's a bit of a separation between the style of event as to whether we would go lunchtime or kind of the evening. You know, so if you think about this kind of event, this conversation in the middle of your day to kind of break it up feels quite nice. Do you want to sit, you know, maybe even sitting in front of a talk would be more nicer for you, I don't know. But in my mind, I can watch a talk anytime, pre-recorded. It's less about the conversation, it's more about the content. So having those in the evening might just be a more kind of being able to cater for both audiences. Then, like people who prefer lunchtimes, there's some still happening, but then people who prefer evenings, we're still doing events, but maybe trying to create a bit of a split between the styles. So informal conversation, I don't know.
You do risk potentially excluding people. So, for example, you know, Magda might be only interested in the really technical talks, and if they're only happening during the lunchtime, then, you know, you've got people who can never attend them. I don't know how true that use case is, but it feels like I just watched that one. Although I do like what you're saying, and I do agree. Unless of course you're giving the talk, in which case I'd much rather give a talk in the lunchtime than in the evening. Yeah, because I'm done by the evening.
I mean, so far the ones we've done in the evening, we've been accommodating speakers really because of time zones.
Well, yeah.
So that sometimes is just, you know, it's out of your hands unless, you know, speakers aren't going to get up at 1 a.m. and things. Like it was good of them to speak at 6 a.m. their time to meet our kind of 6 p.m. for example. So yeah, I think maybe there's just no hard and fast rule around that, and we just need to be flexible, and we work to find times that are as good as many people as possible as we can.
Yeah.
I think we should just ask people. I think we should have a form. I've been on a few communities where they have a standard form at the end of a talk. And they send it out to everyone, so it's a bit of feedback for the speaker, and then it's like, is this time good for you? You know, who else would you like on? Yeah, you know, just some sort of standard form at the end of it, so we can get feedback.
Yeah, we did used to do that. I think it's just boiling down to like there's so many little things that we probably could be doing. It's having people to just take the lead, a bit of ownership on different little areas, and say, right, I'm happy to take care of sending out a feedback thing afterwards.
Because you
go on.
You could plug a few things on the same form. You could stick on the Slack channel. You could stick on the website. You could stick on, hey, by the way, do you know we run JManc? At the end of every year.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So, and it's just a standard thing that we do at the end of every single thing. You send out the form, right? Please can you fill this in, and then you can, I don't know, whack on other things on the form as well.
Yeah, and we do have some. I think Helen's kind of reminded me about this. We do have some incentives, like through sponsorships with the group. So IntelliJ licenses are one thing that we need to push more. We have Venkat's Agile Learner subscriptions that we need to push more. And these are things that like some people won't care about, but other people think, oh yeah, there's another reason to attend because I might be in chance of getting this thing. And I think what's become difficult with that is in person, we'd go around and give everybody a raffle ticket and you'd draw it at the end. And it's just felt like with the Zoom call kind of format, the time kind of pressure and the environment, it's never come naturally to how we would do that. I think I took the LJC approach on one time, which was just to send out to the whole mailing list and get people to express their interest. But the downside to that is that it can be anybody who's not even attended a meetup. And like, I'd like them to go to people who are actively involved in the community as opposed to.
There's one community that they must take the people who are active on the call, and then they've got their own little application that runs at the end, and then randomly select someone who goes, yeah, well done, you've won a.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it? As well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if anybody needs an IntelliJ license, let me know. I've got a backlog, so anyone on this call is welcome to one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Helen's all right.
I was gonna say I'm covered, but thanks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to drop off this call.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
For another one, but Craig, I've left my email in the chat. If you want to get together, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, cool. That's brilliant. Thanks, Helen.
Yes.
And I think to everybody, got a couple of things. We've got the Helen and Craig conversation around the idea around the panel. And I think maybe myself, Jonathan, Craig, and I don't know if Andy and Magda, if you're interested, maybe to have a bit more of a conversation around the website idea and get that kind of off the ground, get something moving. I know you've done a bit of work, Craig, so maybe it's one that we have set up another more specific conversation. Maybe it's just an async conversation in Slack, to be honest.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that if you wanted to.
Yeah,
on it in Slack.
I think we need to drive more people to the Slack channel because I find asynchronous way of communicating is very good. Yeah. I don't have to give my full attention to it. I can have a quick read, go do something else, come back.
Yeah, Magda, are you in Slack? Are you in our Slack, Magda?
I don't think so. Just send me a link with
I'll
install Slack on my phone as well, because I don't have it installed. I used to have it. Yeah, okay.
Just on the topic of talking about GitHub before, do you have a group?
We do.
Acquired?
Yeah, we've already, right, so we've got a GitHub Manchester Java community group, and we actually have a JManc one as well, and that's where some of our current website, which is just a GitHub Pages website, that's where that's hosted. Okay. Basically. But I'll tell you what, because time's kind of a bit limited now, what we probably should do is get everybody into Slack and continue the conversation. And in there, I can share a load of links to what we've got in terms of resources and current presence. And we can try and then work towards what we actually want and what we need to get there. That sounds positive.
Yeah, I've got a couple ideas what I want from the website, but it's whether we can do that on GitHub Pages, because it's all very static, and I did want something where we could sort of query and get data back and filter and that sort of stuff. So
okay, yeah, let's have that conversation then a bit more, and we'll understand those kind of ideas. And I suppose first of all, let's understand what it is we need in terms of requirements. Then we can have that conversation around how we do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, have you got the link there, Magda? Cool. Yeah, so if you join in there, maybe we've just got the general channel. I reckon we use the general channel and we use threads of conversation just because they'll be more visible to people rather than creating another channel for like website and another channel for something else. We had this idea of like multiple channels when we created the Slack group, but it didn't get that big. It might get big at some point where channels make more sense, but for now I think threads will cover our needs fairly well. until we get to a point where it feels like threads aren't doing it for us, then we can just evolve from that point, can't we?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay,
Oh,
bye-bye.
yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
I
Nick.
really appreciate that. Yeah, I'll try and set another of these up then, maybe for a month's time, and that'll give us a chance to talk again, and maybe we'll get a few more people involved. And there's various kind of things we can do around, depending on how much you want to get involved. There's access to different, resources that we can start to share and things like that. Cool. Well, enjoy the rest of your days, and speak to you again soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.